Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Now in this video we are going to start building our project. So first we will start a new backend project, and then once we at least build some kind of endpoints for our API, then we will proceed to begin with the React part. Okay, so if you are new here, please go through the channel and there are lot of content, explore it, and if you like the content, please subscribe to the channel. And if you are already subscribing it, so please follow the new playlist that we have started, the Spring Boot React Project 2025. So you can bookmark this playlist, save this playlist, and please like the video also. So let's begin by starting our Spring Boot backend project. So let's go to the Spring Initializer. So we'll select Java as the language, Maven as the build project, the current stable version, and we will select we'll just say com.book API, or maybe like com.book.api. Artifact will be book API, and here we will say just like this. So package name will be com.book.api. Okay, packaging jar, and we will have Java 21. Okay, now in the dependencies we will select Lombok, we will select Docker Compose, and we will select web. Also we will be selecting Spring Security, and also we will be having the Spring Data JPA and maybe Postgres. Yeah, Postgres. Okay, so and one more dependency is there, validation. Okay, so these are the dependencies that we will be installing: Lombok, Docker Compose support, Spring Web, Spring Security, Spring Data JPA, PostgreSQL, and validation. In terms of security, we will deal with the complete security after we have built our code APIs. So initially we will not be dealing as such with it, or we will just have a basic security. So if you want, we can remove it also for now, because right now it is not required. So let's remove it anyway. And let's move towards the building the APIs with all these dependencies. Okay, then you can generate the project and open in your IntelliJ or Eclipse, whichever ID you want to. Okay, so I have extracted the project. Now I have opened my IntelliJ IDEA community edition. Now just click on open, go to the directory, and here I have this API. Let me reload the path. Okay, so first I've got my book API here. Select the inner folder, okay, in which this red tag is there. Okay, sorry, a black tag is there. Select this folder. Don't select this folder, outer folder. In case you are using Windows, in case you are using Mac or Linux, so you will directly get the project folder itself. But in Windows, you get project folder inside another folder. Okay, so if we click on OK, we'll get our project. So let it index and reload. Give it. Let's wait for some time for the project to get set up. Okay. So my project has got set up. If we go to pom.xml, so we can see our dependencies have come here: JPA, validation, web, Docker Compose, Postgres, and Lombok. Now, since we have used the Docker Compose dependency, so we don't need to install Postgres directly into our system. We can just use Docker Compose file. It gives Docker Compose.yaml file. It will auto run this file. All you need to do is you need to install Docker Desktop in your system. Okay, and just make sure that it's running in the background. Okay, so let me just open it for you. So if you see here, my Docker is running over here. As you can see, Docker Desktop is running in resource saver mode. So see, currently it is completely empty. No images are there. Okay, no container are running. So you can sign into the account also if you want. For now, let's continue with this. Now here we have to provide the credentials to the database, right? So if you have seen the previous backend course, in that we had to define all those things in the application properties file, right? Here also we have to define it here. I'll just open alongside to just show you. Okay, so if you see here, we have defined all the configuration related to the application and the database here, right? All the things that we required for our project. In the same way, we have to do it in our current project. But this time we will take a bit different approach, and we will go via an approach that is more practiced in the enterprises. Okay, so this is a better way. Even if you are developing a project in while the development phase of the project, this is the way which is preferred. So I would say adopt this way of configuring your all these properties. So what is that way? The way is known as by using environment variables. Okay, so first of all we'll refactor this and make it as YAML file. Okay, and we'll remove it. Also we'll just take the help of here. So we need all these things. Mail content right now we don't need. In case we need later, we'll see. So we will just copy paste it here. Okay, now here since we are using PostgreSQL, so we will say PostgreSQL. Okay, and we will change the database name to bookdb, and we will change the default port of the Postgres is 5432. Username, password you can set up. Now before we set up all these things, there are a few things we need to set up. Okay, so here first thing is ports. Now in the ports, the port which is currently defined is a default port within the Docker container in which the PostgreSQL will run. But at what port we want the exposure of our Postgres, okay, so that we can access on our local system. So we have to define that port. So we will just write 5432 also, that in the Docker container as well as on our local system, both the Postgres should be accessible on 5432 port. Okay, now we have to pass these credentials, and whatever credentials we will pass here, we have to pass it here also in the username, password, and the URL. So the best way is to create a .env file or an environmental variable file. So we will do using that. So just say new file, say .env, and here we will do all those things. It's saying to install plugins. Let's see what plugins it offers. Okay, right now let's continue without it. I have not used the plugin, so let's continue it without it. So let's define our credentials here only first. So db username and equal to. So default username of the Postgres is Postgres. Then db password you can set up for yourself. So whatever password you feel you can give it. For simplicity, I'm giving simply 12345. Then comes db url. So db url is this one. We will just copy from here and we'll paste it here. Okay, and what else is required? So these are the main things that is required, correct? So this is the database properties that we have included in the .env file. Also in the git ignore, we have to exclude this file from pushing into the GitHub. Okay, so we have to specify .env. Okay, so this is how we do it. We'll say env files. Okay, .env files. Now what we have to do is, now we have included it in the git ignore because we don't want to push the credentials to the GitHub. We don't want that to be visible. But when we are developing locally, all the credentials that we will be getting from our team or what we are setting up, we will include that in a .env. And if you have ever deployed something in production, or if you have idea about the production environment or a test environment, then you must have seen that we pass there are the options on the deployment platform, whether it's AWS or any cloud platform. Also they give the option to pass the environmental variables in a safer way. So that's the best practice that is done. But when we are developing on a local host, this is the way we should adopt. Okay, so whenever in the application.yml file, we don't have to make any changes. Okay, this is the main thing that we need to take care of. Now to pass these variables into our this compose.yml and application.yml, what we'll do is to pass it into here. Since we need to specify the database name, right? So here we should specify a database name also. So db dot name. So our database name is bookdb. Okay, so we will be passing something like, first we'll say dollar and then curly braces, and inside it we will write db name. Okay, similarly for password, we'll say dollar and just copy paste these variables, and same goes for here. Okay, so this is how we usually do. In fact, you can do for port also, but I'm just making you aware that this is how things you should do. Everything should be configurable like this, and the same way we have to do here also. So we'll just copy this thing from here and we'll paste here, and we'll copy this from here. URL also will be like this only. Okay, db underscore URL, correct. So this is how we have passed our environmental variables. Perfect. Now let's close these files. So these properties are done. Now we need to work with the book. These we need to build the entities, right? So before we build the entity, let's check whether our application is working or not. So if our application is connected to the database, then it's fine. Now currently, as you can see, I don't have any images of Postgres or anything to run, but all these things will be taken care by this compose.yaml file. Okay, so you just have to come to this main method and just run this main method. So if everything is fine, we'll see that it is running. So as you can see, it is saying Postgres pulling. So it is pulling the Postgres image from the Docker Hub. So let's just wait for it to download and then configure the image, pass the credentials and run the container. Okay, so as you can see, the downloading is still going on. Here, if you scroll to the right, you'll see that the progress is there. Just give the permissions, whatever is required, and you can see without any exception, we have our everything has started up, right? Now, if you go to Docker container also, you can see images have come here, and in container has started. So this means that our configuration was perfect, right? So, and you can see the application has started on the port 8080, perfectly fine. So this is some of the best practice that we have adopted, and it worked completely fine. So now it's time to build the entities. So let's first write some packages. Let's create some packages like entities, and we will create another package DTOs, another package will be repositories, and another package will be services, another will be exceptions, and finally we will have controllers. So these are the packages which we will be requiring, right? So first we will start with building our entities. Now our entity will be a book. Okay, now in the book we will first annotate this with the entity annotation to mark this as a Hibernate or JPA entity. Okay, and then we will require certain Lombok parameters. So we will have to have getter. We require a setter. We will require a toString, a noargs constructor, a allargs constructor, and a builder, so that we can construct the book object using builder patterns. Now first we need to define our primary key. So here we will define a primary key using the annotation ID, and we will write the field private long ISBN. So every book is represented by unique ISBN, so we can make it as a primary key. This time we can't auto generate it because ISBN is a particular number, so we will pass it this time, right? Another field we will require is private string title of the book. Next will be private string author. Now there can be multiple authors, but for now we are considering single author. Then we will have private string description. Okay, so basically about the book, what the book is about in a short summary maybe we can show, right? Then private string we will have next field as category. So to with what kind of category it belongs to, whether it is a sci-fi book, it is a fiction, it is drama, or some educational related math book, science book, something like that. Okay, we then need a price, so we will have a double. So double price. Then we will have private integer quantity, how much quantity of the book is available in the market or is published, or maybe something like available. Okay, then now we will also require a book cover, okay, to show it. So basically we require an image uploading part is there, right? So we will have a string field which will have book cover. Okay, we will store the name of the image here, and alongside we will also store its URL. Okay, so I will explain you how we are going to generate this URL, how we are going to get the name of this book cover image. Okay, everything. Now let's apply some database level validations. Okay, so first of all Since it's a column, so we'll use a column annotation and we'll say nullable equal to false. Means this field cannot be null. Okay. Also, we will apply a server side validation. So server side validation is not blank. For the string type, it is not blank. And we can say message this field is required, something like this. Okay. So the same thing we will do it for all the string fields. Okay. Now for the double and integer fields, what we are going to do is we will the database level validation, we obviously have to put it. For the user level validation, we have to write as not null. Okay, because double and integer are classes and are basically the reference type, right? So here it should not be null, it should have some kind of value. So we will pass here value message this field is required, something like this. Okay, now why we are not writing any database level or user level validation on these two fields? So we want to keep it as optional. Okay, that's the reason we are not applying any kind of validation over here. If we get the value, we will insert it. If we don't get the value, it's fine. Okay, so here comes all the entity part. Now let's move to the DTO. Let's open it as such. Now book DTO. So there were some questions like I've seen in many comments that why we require a separate DTO class, why can't we not directly interact with this book class itself? So the reason is the separation of concerns. So what I means is this book is an entity which is mapped to a database table, right? Now the interaction between the database layer and the service layer should be different, and the interaction between the controller to the service layer should be different. So there has to be some kind of intermediary. Okay, and that's why we use the book DTO object, right? Also there are some, when we are working on a very complex project, so there are lots of like one to many or many to many, so some this kind of relationships are there between the tables. So in that case, what happens is while fetching the data, there is some kind of issue with regard to serialization, and actually the fetching is done in a very recursively, it is infinitely being done. So to avoid that kind of scenarios, also we use the DTO objects, which are the plain Java object for and act as a intermediary between the controller, which is basically you can say the user, and the controller layer and the database layer. So that is the separation of concern we need to maintain. Now here we just need to get the Lombok things. So we'll get the Lombok, and same all the fields we have to write again. ISBN. Let me just copy it. Why to write each and every field? Just remove this column annotation because this is the database level validation and this is not an entity. So we don't need database level validation here. Now another question you might ask is why we are putting this user level validation on DTO field also. We have already put over the book. Why we are putting here? So as I said, book DTO class is used to interact between the controller and the service layer, and the book entity is directly interacting with the database thing, right? Now controller will expect a request body of book DTO type, and it will pass on to the service layer. In the service, you will pass the values around from book DTO to book object. Now there can be instance when you are applying the business logic on the service layer, some fields may skip the validation because you have applied the validation but on the DTO layer, but while passing to the book, the value didn't got passed. Maybe you have applied if else or some kind of condition, and somehow the null value got passed over from book DTO to book field, the corresponding field in the book class. So to avoid this kind of situation, we generally, it is a good practice that we apply the validation on the book DTO class as well as on the book class. Okay, so that ensures the complete safety that no null values or all the required values we always get, and those values are valid, right? So these are the things. Now next we will build a repository. So for it we'll require an interface. So we will have book repository. So we will say extends JPA repository. Here we will pass book and the primary key of the type long. Okay. So this is done, and we will define the services finally. So it will also be a interface. So book service. Now in the book service, there are 4 to 5 methods, the standard CRUD operations which we will do. So it is book DTO, add book. It will involve two things. First is book DTO, obviously. Second will be a multi-part file. So multi-part file. So these two things are required. Then we will have another book DTO and get book. Okay, so we just need to pass a ISBN here. Then we will have list of book DTO and get all books, and then we will have an update method. So we will say update book. Here we have to pass book ISBN, and we have to pass the book DTO object, the body, and obviously the multi-part again, because we may want to modify the existing book cover also. And finally a delete book thing, which will pass a string, okay, simply a message, right? So these are the methods that we will be implementing, and there will be one more interface which will be a file service. Okay, now this file service interface is required for handling the upload and download of the files. So let's also define the method for it. Now if you don't know about these things, I would highly recommend you to go to the channel and watch this backend course, right? I have explained in detail about all the things there, about the file upload, why, how we do it, what are the logic behind it. We will cover the logic here also, but if you are confused why we are using a file service interface, why we are doing this, then more broad level explanation I have given in that particular video on backend course, right? So we will have a file upload file method in which we will pass the path in which we want to upload the file, and we will pass the file. And second thing is input stream. So this will get the resource file. So we will say get resource file. So we need to tell the path from where to extract the file and what is the file name on that path. Okay, now the first method actually throws IO exception. Okay, and second method also throws file not found exception basically. So we will, okay, we can conclude from here, file not found exception. Fine. So these are the interfaces that we have already defined. So we have in this video we have covered book entity, we have built the entity, we have defined the book DTO, we have defined the methods for our book service for doing the CRUD operations, and we have wrote the method for our file upload and download thing. Now we will start with implementation of all these things from the next video. I hope you have understood the concept which is required. So I hope you have got a new idea about this env file things. Maybe some of you already know about it, but for some of you it may be a new thing. So this is a standard way to do things, and we have implemented all these things. We have at least started our project, and we have started to build the foundation of it. In the next video, we will implement all the service layer methods, and I will explain all the methods and the logic behind it in detail. So don't worry about that. You will get complete explanation whether we are building the backend or whether we are building the front end. Okay, so that's all for this video. Please do like the video, share with more like-minded people, and subscribe to the channel if you have not yet subscribed. So I'll see you in the next one. Till then, bye bye.